A single thread, delicate and solitary, may seem small at first. But when woven into the loom, something extraordinary can happen. A single thread, one act of kindness, is carefully pulled through. A warm meal, a bed, a safe place to live. And then another. The encouragement of a mentor, the volunteer who becomes a friend, the dignity of a job, the commitment of a community. Each thread, each act of kindness builds an interwoven community. What began as a simple, solitary act becomes a redemptive connection with the power to end family breakdown. For a child in a struggling family, a mother who finds herself alone, a dad reclaiming his dignity, the transforming power of community doesn't just lift one life, but can change generational stories. When each one of us makes the choice to become involved, we become a part of a community that can transform families and break the orphan cycle. What was once a single thread becomes a tapestry, woven with care for every child.
Well, good evening. Welcome to the big event. We having fun? Heck yeah, we are. Man, I tell you, every year I come out here and I say the same thing. I love the big event. This is such a fun night where we gather together all of our closest partners and friends and family and coworkers, and we just celebrate. We celebrate everything that God is doing in our ministry. And I'm so grateful that you all continue to come out and celebrate this work. Honestly, you make this night extra special. And I know we've said it already, and we're going to say it again. Thank you. On behalf of our entire team, thank you. We love you. If this is your first big event, let me kind of set the stage for what tonight is all about. So, the big event is one night that we take out of every year, and we gather together, like I said, our closest partners, and we share inspiring stories about the work that God is doing through local churches around the world to care for vulnerable families and kids in crisis. But we only do this once a year, right? And so we feel like, seeing as you're here, we have an obligation not only to share inspiring stories, but also update you on the ministry. Like, this is a partnership, and we want you to be informed partners, not only about what we do, but to understand the how behind we do it. Like, what are some of the principles and the guiding philosophies that lead this ministry and help us make decisions? Like, we want you to be able to talk with authority about our ministry because you're our closest partners. So we like to say that the big event is part information and part inspiration. So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to start with a little bit of information, and then we're going to end with a little bit of inspiration. Does that sound good? All right, let's get to it. Okay, so if you were here last year, you heard me talk about how Go Project is the parent organization, and our mission is to break the orphan cycle through the power of community, commerce, and the love of Jesus. Or to put it simply, we exist to break the orphan cycle, right? That's why we're here. And we achieve that through these 3 key initiatives, what we call our preventative platforms: CarePortal, GoX, and Strong Family. And each of these seeks to strengthen families and prevent family breakdown. If our mission is to break the orphan cycle, we got to get to the root of the issue, which is family breakdown. So each of these attack family breakdown from different angles. So while they may seem very distinct and kind of autonomous, the scarlet thread that pulls everything we do together is this commitment to strengthen families. But the reality is, we haven't always done things this way, right? In the early days of our ministry, we were an orphanage ministry. We built and we funded orphanages. And you know, God used that time to bless us and to transform thousands of lives, and it was a beautiful season of ministry. But he also taught us some things during that time. He taught us that, you know, a lot of kids who live in orphanages actually have families somewhere. In fact, upwards of 90% of kids who live in orphanages have living family members who would gladly care for them if they only had the means. And that the biggest reasons that cause kids to fall out of families and families to break down are issues stemming from poverty. So if we're serious about breaking the orphan cycle, we've got to get really serious about strengthening families. That's what it's going to take, right? And so it was out of that idea that we first launched GoX, our living wage fair trade apparel company that manufactures goods in Haiti and then ships them to the States, where we do screen printing and shipping and distribution out of our Kansas City office. GoX exists to strengthen families through the dignity of work, right? We create jobs, creates economic lift, families do a lot better. A few years later, out of this same idea, we launched CarePortal. We realized there's a foster care crisis happening right here in our own backyard, and we've got to do something about it. So we took some time to evaluate, you know, where are the gaps in care and how can we make a meaningful difference in this massive system? And we came up with this idea, this technology platform that connects kids and families in crisis to a care-sharing network of local churches and businesses and individuals who can rally together to help. And we called it CarePortal. Meanwhile, internationally, we began experimenting with, you know, different ways of strengthening families. And we created this framework that worked through the local church to create bottom-up empowerment by leveraging the assets of a community and the assets within every family in that community. And we started to see families flourish. And it spread virally, first throughout East Africa, then into Haiti, then India, and now into the Middle East. So this is our ministry model. This is our operating model. Go Project is the parent organization, and these preventative platforms, each seeking to prevent family breakdown through their own unique ways. But we've been asked several times a pretty important question that we've had to wrestle with. We've been asked, you know, have you ever considered taking one of these platforms and spinning them out as their own individual, independent organization? Like, what if you took GoX? What if you spun out GoX? Maybe it could thrive on its own, and then you could go back to innovating new solutions and then launch those as independent organizations. Maybe that's what God is calling us to do. And so we've wrestled with this, and we prayed about it. And while I have no doubt that we will continue innovating solutions, and we will see this family of initiatives grow over time, the idea of spinning them out as independent organizations is not for us. It's not for us. It's not a bad idea, don't get me wrong. It's actually a pretty good idea, but it's not for us. What we've observed is that God is doing something through this ministry model that is catalytic. What we have found is that whatever happens in one part of this organization as distinct and unique as they may feel, has a catalytic impact on the other parts of the organization. We believe that we have a greater impact together than we would individually. And we have this really cool story that perfectly exemplifies this, and I want to share it with you guys. All right, so it all starts with two ladies that we met a few years ago named Jeannie and Joan. So Jeannie is a phenomenal businesswoman. She sits on the board of several organizations around the States, each of which are serving kids and families in various ways. Joan happens to be a phenomenal organizational leader, and she and her husband had created an organization in Haiti that sought to end child slavery, right? In Haiti, child slavery is a massive issue. Upwards of 200,000 kids living in Haiti live as indentured servants. So she created this courageous ministry that was going to tackle that head on. So Jeannie and Joan have been leading this organization for quite a while. And they know very well that child traffickers will often target the most vulnerable, poverty-stricken families in a community. And that one of the best ways that you can prevent child trafficking is by strengthening families. So she calls us up, and she says, hey, what do you say we form a partnership? And maybe we can learn from some of the tools that you've developed at Strong Family and deploy them through our own network of churches to try to make a difference in child slavery in Haiti. And we start this conversation, and it's going really well. And at some point, Jeannie and Joan fly to Haiti, and they're meeting with Joan's team, and they're strategizing. And I get a call from Joan while she's in Haiti, and it goes like this. She says, okay, Jake, hey, I'm in Haiti. I'm here with Jeannie. And she mentioned that one of the organizations she sits on the board of in the States is looking for a new t-shirt company. And we were wondering if we could whiz by the GoX factory. I told her about GoX and how GoX exists to strengthen families. What do you think? So we went ahead and set that up, and within a couple hours, Jeannie and Joan are walking the factory floor of our GoX Haiti facility. And I get a follow-up call from Joan, and she says, oh, Jake, thanks so much for setting that up. That was amazing. I have no doubt when Jeannie gets back to the States, she'll put in an order for a few t-shirts. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, we have a minimum order, right? It's 24 units. That's our minimum. And I'm just hoping that Jeannie's orders at least that, or this is going to get really, really awkward, right? Well, it turns out the organization that Jeannie sits on the board of is called For Others. It was founded by Chris Tomlin, one of the most successful touring musicians of today. And Jeannie isn't just looking for a few dozen t-shirts for Chris's organization For Others. She's covertly vetting t-shirt companies to see if one of them could take over Chris Tomlin's upcoming North America tour to do all of his tour merchandise. So we don't only get a contract for a couple dozen t-shirts, we get a purchase order for tens of thousands of t-shirts. And we begin feverishly creating t-shirts in Haiti and shipping them to our facility here in Kansas City and screen printing Chris's logo on them and then drop shipping them to concert venues around the country ahead of Chris's arrival. Chris becomes one of our biggest customers at GoX. All because these two ladies were trying to just faithfully serve kids in Haiti, right? Like, this story doesn't happen if we spin out Strong Family as its own organization, right? These ministry initiatives are catalytic. What happens in one has a catalytic impact on the other. It's amazing, isn't it? But the story doesn't end there. Chris decides he wants to come and meet the people who are running GoX. They did a great job. He'd like to meet with them and talk about what it would look like to do t-shirts for his next tour. So at the end of his North America tour, he comes to our office in Kansas City, and the Chris Tomlin team are sitting down with the GoX team, and they're talking about t-shirts. And at some point, Chris looks out of the boardroom window, and he sees on the wall the CarePortal logo. And he says, man, what is it with this organization, CarePortal? I keep hearing about CarePortal and about how I should get my organization for others to partner with CarePortal. Why is that logo on your wall? Do you do their t-shirts? And Chris discovers that Go Project is a parent organization and that CarePortal, just like GoX and Strong Family, is one of the preventative platforms of Go Project. And he just happens to be sitting in our headquarters. So all of a sudden, the conversation turns from t-shirts to, yeah, let's do some t-shirts, but additionally, what would it look like for us to partner on a national scale? So we start telling Chris about our strategy for CarePortal, about how we've been pinpointing areas of concentrated family breakdown around the country, right? We have a list of counties where the highest concentration of kids in foster care live. And there's one county right at the top that is like the epicenter of family breakdown in the United States. And yet everything we had seemed to try to enter this market had failed. We needed churches to come to the table. We needed government agencies to come to the same table. We needed a team of people who could navigate the complexities of these relationships. And we needed money so we could fund the launch of CarePortal. And the reality was we didn't have any of those. We didn't have the churches. We didn't have the agencies. Didn't have the team. We didn't have the money. The county that I'm talking about is LA County in California. And the stats around this county are pretty significant. So in the United States, there are 3,143 counties. 3,143 counties in the United States. And yet one, LA County alone, accounts for 10% of all kids in foster care. That means at any given moment, there's between 30 and 40,000 kids in foster care in LA County alone. If we're serious about strengthening families, we've got to be in this market, right? This is where the foster care crisis is raging the hardest. If we're serious about it, we've got to be in this market. And yet everything we had tried failed. So Chris and his team, they think about this and they say, okay, we're going to go off, we're going to talk about it, and you guys talk about it, and at some point in the future, we'll reconvene and we'll see how we can partner. So some time goes by, and Chris announces he's going to do a concert in LA at the Hollywood Bowl. And in the middle of his concert, he stops the music and he takes the mic, and for 10 minutes, he talks about CarePortal. And he invites churches to come to the table. And he invites government agencies to come to the table. And he invites every single person in attendance to give to help launch CarePortal in LA County. And in one night, every barrier we were facing was completely eradicated. Right? This place that had become almost like this spiritual stronghold, in one night, every barrier is completely demolished. And it's just blue skies ahead. It's amazing. That doesn't happen if we spin out GoX as its own thing, right? These ministry initiatives are mutually catalytic. What happens in one has a catalytic impact on the other. It's amazing, isn't it? We launched LA County. But the story doesn't end there. The first person that we hired to help lead LA County is a lady by the name of Rebecca Weigel. Rebecca Weigel happens to run a Hollywood movie production company with her husband, and she's a screenwriter, among other things. She has a huge heart for kids, and she's well connected, so she starts leading our work in LA, and as she's doing that, she gets to know CarePortal. She hears about our history, and here's the story of one of our very first church partners. A church that inspired so much about what we believe and how we do things. It's a little church in a town called Possum Trot, Texas. And this one church, filled with all kinds of challenges, with barely 100 members, single-handedly ended the foster care crisis in their community. They did it by adopting every single child that was eligible out of the system, emptied the system. One church, barely 100 members, ended the foster care crisis in their community. And this was huge for us. We were like, look what's possible when one small group of people take this seriously. Like, this is our purpose. This is what God has called us to do. We exist to serve the most vulnerable among us. And Rebecca's blown away by this story. She says, this is a story that needs to be told. So she starts writing a screenplay. And she and her husband start making a movie. And last summer, in collaboration with Angel Studios, we launched a Hollywood movie. We did the world premiere in LA, then we did premieres across theaters around the country, and then we did an international release, and you can stream it tonight on Angel Studios or on Amazon. We made a Hollywood movie. Like, who saw that coming? Right? This doesn't happen. What a crazy story. We have no business making movies, but we know some people who are really good at it, right? It's amazing. This doesn't happen. It doesn't happen if we spin out these different organizations or if we spin out these different initiatives as independent organizations. But the story doesn't end there. 4 others come back to the table. And they say, hey guys, we got this great idea. We have this budding partnership with Liberty University football. Their head coach is looking for ways to get their players involved in serving their communities. And he's willing to foot the bill. So we came up with this idea. What if the head coach created a fund, and every week his student athletes could meet together, go to careportal.org, and browse all of the open requests and pray over which requests they want to spend their coach's money to fund, right? And on the back end, maybe you guys can figure out how to get that money to a local church in the community where the need originated, and so a local church can create a connection and an ongoing relationship. And we were like, man, well, heck, that's a pretty good idea. And if we're going to do that for one college, why don't we do it for others? And if we're going to do that, why wouldn't we do it for businesses? And as a matter of fact, why wouldn't we just make this available to anyone? So that literally anyone on earth could go to careportal.org and look at open requests and choose to fund whatever the Lord would move on their heart to fund. And on the back end, we'll make sure that we have churches ready in every community that we're active to meet those needs and form an ongoing connection with the family. And so we did, and we called it the Community Champion Fund. The Community Champion Fund made it possible for anyone to partner with us and get involved. It took CarePortal to the stratosphere, right? It has become one of the primary ways that we fund needs across the country. I mean, heck, half the people in this room have funded a CarePortal request through this technology, through this functionality. It radically changed who we are. That doesn't happen if we spin out Strong Family and GoX and CarePortal as independent organizations, right? It's an amazing story. So who gets to take credit for all of this? We've got a Hollywood movie. We've got the CarePortal Community Champion Fund. We've got all this amazing stuff happening. Who gets to claim the impact? Is this Strong Family because they were kind of first on the scene? Is it GoX because they took such great care of Chris Tomlin and his team? Is it CarePortal because they were ready to innovate at a moment's notice? It's all of us. We all do, right? We believe fundamentally that we are better together, that what happens in one part of the organization has a catalytic impact on the others. We believe that we are better together. And that's the theme for tonight. In fact, I'll go a step further. The theme for tonight is We need each other. Like, we need each other. You know, we live in a day and age where our society can feel really divided. But the truth is, we need each other, right? What I love the most about this story is if you trace it all the way back to the beginning, it starts with two women faithfully serving the kids that God put in front of them. And God took that thread and he created this epic story. Do you think they had any idea that that phone call would result in tens of thousands of children being served and a Hollywood movie being produced? Not a chance. When you serve the kids that God puts in front of you, he takes that thread of obedience and he does something immeasurably more than you could possibly imagine. And this is one of the stories, one of many stories that we like to tell to get this point across. We need each other. But the story doesn't end there. And this is where it gets really cool, right? So this is cool, no doubt. That was the information part. Now let's talk about the inspiration part. This is where it gets really cool. So it turns out one of the coaches at Liberty University football was born here in Kansas City, not far from the Kaufman. And he made a commitment that any CarePortal need that came up in his childhood community, he would make sure that CarePortal would fund. that Liberty University would fund. Unbeknownst to him, in his childhood community happens to be one of our most active CarePortal churches. And they have made a similar commitment. Any CarePortal need that pops up in our community, we're going to meet that need. So long as we can find a donor to cover the bills, we will meet that need and we will form the relationship. And so this informal partnership happens between this coach at Liberty University and this local church here in Kansas City. And this church fully understands the purpose of CarePortal, right? It's important to meet people where they're at. It's important to help with whatever needs they need in the moment, to let a little pressure off. But lasting transformation comes by connection. It comes through relationships. And that's the point of CarePortal. CarePortal positions the church to enter the lives of struggling families in their community and wrap around them with a relationship. That's the whole point of CarePortal. We believe fundamentally that the local church is God's agent of change for communities around the world. And our job is to empower that church. Everything we do is to empower that church. It's their mission. God has spiritually empowered them for this work. Our job is to support it. This church knows that. So they start meeting needs left, right, and center. And it doesn't take long before their church is filled with families that they met through CarePortal. They meet the family, they meet the need, they pray with them, they invite them into the church. And as the families come in, they realize, some of them are doing okay, but a lot of them have other needs, some pretty significant needs. The CarePortal was the beginning of this ongoing relationship, but families have relational needs, and they have health needs, and food needs, and shelter needs, and all these other needs. So this church begins to posture itself entirely around the idea that our job is to keep these families together. They're part of our body now. They're part of our church. We're not going to leave them behind. We're going to figure this out. And so they start forming housing and shelter ministries and food pantry ministries, and they partner with other organizations to get education and recovery ministries. And at some point, a couple of leaders in this church raise their hand, and they're like, hey guys, we keep talking about how we want to move families from a state of survival to a state of flourishing. But what does that even mean? What does that mean to move someone to flourishing? So the church had a meeting, and they're like, you know what? We should probably ask the families how they would define flourishing, right? Like, they get to determine what flourishing means for them. And whatever they say, we got to go with that, right? Whatever they say, that's the goal. They get to determine what flourishing means for them. And so they did. They grouped together these families. They asked them the question, what does flourishing mean to you? And every family they asked answered the same way, in their own words, but in the same way. It's one of the most powerful definitions I've ever heard. They said, flourishing to me is my ability to help someone else in their time of need. Flourishing to me is helping someone else in their time of need, even when I am facing my own challenges. My ability to serve someone else, when I do that, I feel like I flourish. I feel like I found my purpose. Like this is what God has made me for. Is that not biblical? Is that not why we're here? Right? Is that not the call? To serve one another, and in the process, we find our purpose. We find a closeness to God, and we begin to flourish. And so, they decide, well, heck, if families want to serve each other, we got plenty of needs. We can figure this out. So they begin forming families into closer proximity. And they charge families with serving one another. So when one of you is struggling, the rest of you rally around and you serve one another. And as you do that, you begin to flourish. And if a family really hits a wall, we can throw up a CarePortal request. And over here, there's a guy at Liberty University who will fund that request. And so this ecosystem emerges. CarePortal's in it, Liberty University's, the church is in it, and families begin to thrive. And it's not a straight line by any means, right? Families are up and then they're down and they're up and they're down, but they're fighting and they're fighting together because they need each other. And in the middle of this amazing community here in Kansas City, there's a lady named Sasha. Sasha's a single mom who's been fighting for her kids. We met Sasha a few months ago. Our team met her and interviewed her. And she has graciously allowed us to tell her story tonight. So let's take a look.
So I've been using drugs since I was like 13 years old. But it really started picking up once I turned 16 years old. My mom lost custody of me again, and my brothers went to jail, and my dad separated from my mom, and my mom was in the streets. So that's when I started going house to house, running away from my foster care, and I began smoking every day, drinking every day. And I didn't think that it was a problem, but it became really bad, and I ended up going to jail. I don't want to die an addict. I don't want to end up like that. I don't want to be found behind a dumpster or, I don't want that to be my story. The lowest point for me was like 2023. I felt stripped, I felt isolated, I felt like I didn't have anything. I felt like I was out of my comfort zone. I couldn't run home to my grandma, I can't run to my mom, I don't have no family, I'm out here. Like I feel like I was in the wild, like I was out here, I didn't have no support, I was struggling with addiction. It was just one thing after another thing after another thing after another thing. And I didn't have the mental capacity to overcome those things at the time. I waited down on this corner, we were waiting for the bus. It was the summer I just gave birth to my son. And I'm praying to God, like telling God, like help me, please. And down the block comes a girl named Belinda and her husband. They're like, praise the Lord. And I'm like, praise the Lord. And they gave us words of encouragement. They spoke life to us. They said, God bless you. Come to this church. It's so good. It felt good to know that at least we were around brothers and sisters, like brothers and sisters in the faith. That to me, that's something good. I have 5 people in my life that I feel like are like pillars to me. Each one encourages me, sharpens me, shapes me by like either it's correction or advice or just keeping me accountable. Maddie and Julie, they help me mentally like scope out my life and talk to me and come alongside me, help me do homework. Like Julie would call me and say, how you doing? Come, let's meet up, let's make bread. Like I felt loved, I felt seen. April, she knows a lot of resources, so she's helped me a lot. And she kept being persistent and she kept being loving. And now she's my best friend. My sponsor, Courtney, is making sure that I go to that outpatient program, you know? And now there's my counselor named Johnny, encouraging me and getting me ready to be strong and telling me the truth. And she's honest with me and she gives me homework. God is building me up on a strong foundation. You know what I'm saying? These women are pillars. You know what I'm saying? And now they're not selfish. They're humble. They want to help other women too. And I want to be a part of that. Like I want to help them help other women too.
Okay, ready? Who's gonna pray? Who's gonna pray for us? Me. Come on, let's hold hands, now.
If it wasn't for my kids, I would have not made it, to be honest. But I felt like every time I wanted to got so depressed that I wanted to die, I'll look and I see my kid and he'll be like with a loaded diaper, like, Mom, you changed my diaper. And I'm like, oh, not today, I changed his kid's diaper. You know what I'm saying? Maybe another day. Like I had to be there for my kids. I have to make it for them. So even in the beginning of my recovery, I was so down and depressed that I didn't want to live. But I said, like, at the end of the day, if I die, who's gonna take care of my kids? So that's what started and helped me get clean. Like, if I can't do it for myself, let me do it for them. And as I started getting better and better, I'm like, let me do it for myself. Let me do it because God created me with a purpose and for a purpose. In the AA book, it says that we are but trusted servants, we do not govern. And I felt like God had put people in my life that loved him, but they weren't trying to be rough with me. They were just trying to come alongside me and encourage me, you know? And that was like something I didn't understand because I'm like, you know, why? But when I started seeing people in NA speaking about where they came from, what they struggled from, and when they would share, they would look so free. And I'm like, I wanted that. Because you know that this place is safe. You could share these things, you know? And that started helping me even more and more. I'm learning about grieving and boundaries and values, and all these things are so important to me. So then now all I pray is that I can glorify him, and that when I'm on my feet, that I can help another person. I'm standing by the grace of God, but God put so many people in my life to pour into me. I feel like it takes a village, it takes a community to work together. We can't do it alone. And those 5 girls throughout this whole time, like they have been like my pillars in my life, you know, that I feel like God really uses them because it did change my life a lot. And that's what I want. I want to encourage my sister. I want to be my sister's keepers. You know what I'm saying? So just like my sisters encourage me.
In 2023, Sasha hits the lowest point of her life, and she finds herself sitting at a bus stop, dejected and alone. And along came a woman named Belinda, who saw her. And she didn't know Sasha, but she knew Sasha. Like, she's been where Sasha's been. Belinda's been helped by CarePortal. She's part of this amazing church that's doing amazing things. And out of her own flourishing, she reached out to serve and help Sasha. She spoke encouraging words to her and invited her to be a part of this church. And Sasha courageously accepted. She went to this church and she found a community. She found relationships. And over time, it began to restore her. She started fighting for her kids, fighting for herself, and she had the community around her helping her. Sasha is a powerful, fully empowered, courageous woman. And her story is playing out right here. Her story's playing out right here. Sasha's in the room. Can we give her a round of applause? She's right here. Sasha, thank you. Thank you. You sharing your story with us. It's not just your story. You know that. Like, you are lending a voice to so many others who are just like you. Thank you for being so courageous, and thank you for inspiring us. Thank you. You're welcome. But the story doesn't end there. Sasha was just approved for a rent-to-own program, and next week, she and her kids are moving into the house that she will one day own. Next week. Two years ago to today, look at what the power of this community is capable of. We need each other. And when we embrace that and we understand that we all have a part to play, look at what God does. He writes these stories that are just crazy. Just crazy. You know, this slide fired before I could tee it up. There you go. Solved. You know, everyone has a part to play. And just like how this story began with two women faithfully serving kids out of their own flourishing, and God took that thread and created this amazing story, so Sasha's began in the same way, right? Just one person reaching out, serving someone, and look at what that did. A massive transformation. So who gets to take credit for that story? Right? Is it Belinda? Is it the church? Is it CarePortal? Who cares? Who cares? We need each other. That's the point, right? And so I think at times we've done you all a bit of a disservice, right? We come out here and we talk about one part of our organization. Like, we're like, all right, here's GoX, and here's a story about GoX, and here's some impact, or here's Strong Family, or CarePortal, or whatever. But the reality is that's not the whole story, because each part of the organization catalyzes the other, right? So when we talk about impact, it's because we all got involved and we all helped achieve this impact. What we've never done is calculate the collective impact of this organization. So tonight, for the first time ever, second time ever, we're going to show you what that collective impact looks like. What does this ministry model with the local church at the center of everything, what is it capable of over time? Every child we've served, every parent we've served, every job we've created. Are you ready? Let's go. Over time, we have served 647,059 people. That's amazing. Every one of these is a story just like Sasha, right? And behind them, there's a community of people wrapping around them, forming relational connections. And behind them is a local church. And behind that local church is one of our preventative platforms. And behind that is you. You make this ministry work. We need each other. This isn't our ministry and you give us money. That's not the way it works. This is our ministry. We need each other. This is as much yours as it is mine or anyone else's at Go Project. The reality is, God did this, right? Who gets to take credit for these stories? God does. And you know what? He could have done it without us. He didn't need us, but he chooses to work with us. He chooses to take your thread and my thread and knit together this amazing tapestry. Why? Because you flourish when you serve the people that God puts in front of you. Just like Jeannie and Joan, all the way back in Haiti. Who knew that they would spark this incredible movement? I'd like to leave you with one question to ponder, okay? In light of all of this, in pursuit of your own flourishing, what is God asking you to do tonight?